My phone buzzed, and Annie's name flashed on the screen. Her voice quivered with unease as she spoke, sending a wave of concern through me. Without hesitation, I hurried to her place, desperate to understand what was troubling her. What she revealed hit me like a ton of bricks. She was pregnant and completely lost about what to do next. We'd only been together for a few months, and the idea of becoming a husband, let alone a father, felt overwhelming. I wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. But despite my doubts, we decided to get married. Looking back, I can't say I was happy. I felt like my life had been put on hold, and our relationship began to crumble almost immediately. Annie's behavior started to raise red flags, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Whenever she claimed to be heading to the doctor, I discreetly followed her. Not once did she actually go to an appointment. Instead, she'd meet up with friends at cafes or restaurants. Confused and frustrated, I confided in my dad, who helped me see the bigger picture. He pointed out that I was a good-looking guy in great shape with a comfortable financial situation. Plenty of women were interested in me, and Annie, he suggested, might have manipulated me into marriage. After a few more weeks of quietly observing her, everything became clear. I filed for divorce without hesitation. From that moment on, I became much more cautious in my relationships. I made a conscious effort to downplay my wealth, hoping to find someone who truly cared about me for who I was, not what I had. It took a long time, but eventually I met Natalie. I was 28, and she was just 20. She had no idea about my career or financial status, and that was exactly what I wanted. Her innocence and genuine nature drew me in, and I pursued her relentlessly. Over time, we developed a deep connection, and I knew I wanted to spend my life with her. When I proposed, however, Natalie surprised me by saying no. She felt she was too young to settle down, and her refusal only made me more determined to win her over. I went all out to prove my commitment, and without realizing it, I became obsessed with the idea of marrying her. I even started hinting about starting a family, hoping she might get pregnant. I know it sounds selfish, but at the time, I felt like it was my only option. A few months later, it happened. Natalie was pregnant. She was terrified, as she hadn't planned on having kids for at least another 5 years. But this time, she agreed to marry me. I introduced her to my dad and the rest of my family, and they all adored her. They told me she was the one, and I believed it too. We were ready to build a life together, and I was overjoyed that the woman I loved was carrying my child. By then, I owned my own home, so we didn't have to worry about renting anymore. For the first time, I felt comfortable showing my financial stability, and I spoiled Natalie with gifts, affection, and attention. Our daughter, Angela, was born, and we poured all our love into her. She looked so much like me that I never once doubted she was mine. When Angela turned 3, Natalie decided to return to work, and that's when things began to change. She started dressing differently, more provocatively, and wearing bold makeup. Her social life picked up, and she began going out with friends more often. She even joined a gym and transformed her body, looking more stunning than ever. Motherhood had enhanced her figure, and she carried herself with a new confidence. But her changes made me anxious. I couldn't shake the fear that she might be drifting away, or worse, that she'd met someone else. Her demeanor shifted in every aspect of our lives, even in the bedroom. She often claimed she was too tired, depressed, or just not in the mood. The woman I thought I knew so well seemed like a stranger, and I was terrified of losing her. Her responses to my questions began to feel scripted, as if she practiced them in advance. This only deepened my suspicions, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started observing her more closely, hoping to uncover the truth. But after a month of watching her every move, I still had no concrete evidence of infidelity. The only red flag was her phone. She'd suddenly put a password on it and refused to let it out of her sight. She even took into the bathroom or shower, which struck me as odd. Whenever I asked who kept messaging her, she'd deflect, claiming it was her mom, dad, or someone else entirely. If I ever asked to see her phone, she'd come up with a quick excuse to keep it away from me. Her evasiveness only fueled my determination to find out what she was hiding. Then, an opportunity presented itself. A friend invited us to a wedding, and Natalie drank way too much that night. By the end of the evening, she was so intoxicated she could barely remember her own name. Her behavior was embarrassing, and I ended up carrying her out of the venue while she mumbled incoherently the entire way home. Once we got back, she took a shower, and we eventually climbed into bed. Out of nowhere, she started gushing about how much she loved me, calling me an amazing husband and father. I always thought I was doing a decent job, but then she said something that sent chills down my spine. "I don't deserve a man like you." I pressed her to explain, but she was too far gone to string together a coherent sentence. The rest of the night was spent taking care of her as she battled nausea and exhaustion. By 2 a.m., she finally passed out, and that's when I saw my chance. I grabbed her phone and unlocked it. What I discovered left me speechless. There were over 100 messages from someone named Mariah, filled with explicit details and declarations of love. It was undeniable. Natalie was having an affair. Waking her up in that state would have been pointless, so I decided to wait until morning to confront her. Sleep was impossible. I spent the rest of the night replaying everything in my head. As I scrolled through all 113 messages, I realized this affair had been going on for 2 months. Even worse, they'd been meeting up in my apartment whenever I was out of town. Suddenly, everything made sense. This explained why Natalie had been acting so strangely, and why she'd often encouraged me to take our daughter on trips to visit relatives. My emotions were a whirlwind: pain, anger, heartbreak. I couldn't stop thinking about all the beautiful moments we'd shared, and now all I wanted to do was cry. How had it come to this? By morning, Natalie woke up groaning for water. Despite everything, I wasn't cruel, so I helped her. Then I brought up Mariah. Her reaction said it all. She stammered something about having deleted everything, but when she saw the anger on my face, she tried to backtrack, claiming I was misunderstanding the situation. Eventually, she broke down and confessed to the affair. There was only one thing left to do. I kicked her out of the house. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I knew I had no other choice. I filed for divorce, and my daughter stayed with me since Natalie didn't have a stable place to raise a child.
The betrayal took a long time to heal from. I kept blaming myself for trusting Natalie so completely. My dad stepped in to help me through the darkness. He treated my daughter and me to a luxurious vacation at a resort abroad, and it was exactly what we needed. The warm beaches and sunny skies worked like therapy, and by the time we returned, we felt like new people. That trip marked the beginning of a fresh chapter for me and my little girl. It was the moment our new life truly began.